I'm doing the podcast tonight, Bill.
All right. Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. Rick's doing the old podcast, letting everybody know right off the bat. Gonna kick it right in with high tempo. Matt, I'm just gonna give you a shout out with your win on Friday. I believe, if I did the math correctly, you have guaranteed a winning record. So congrats.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Congratulations, Matt.
So hopefully, thank you. We're hoping to pull at least another win or two out to help us for the playoffs, because a lot of seedings up in the air with District 6 that we're in. We're just hoping to continue winning and hopefully get ourselves a first round bye that's at stake the next 2 weeks.
All right, you want to keep going, Matt? What do you got for high tempo this week?
One of the things that I was looking at and watching ESPN got me thinking this way. Really talking highly on Texas A&M and the job Jimbo Fisher did, and it got me thinking. He's starting off at 5-2. You have Mario Cristobal at Oregon, who's 5-1 right now, just losing this in Washington. And then you have the other three coaches, Taggart, Frost, and Sumlin, who are 3-4. Frost is 0-6, and Taggart's 3-3. Just think that with some of those guys, how much of that table was ready for them when they came in versus what the job that they're going to have to do going forward. And as far as the high tempo, I think it's interesting to see how ESPN's spinning what a great coach Fisher suddenly is now that he's no longer with Florida State in the ACC.
Well, I think you're breaking up a little bit there, but I think the gist is you're looking at new coaches, seeing that Jimbo Fisher's having a pretty successful year. I think, and it might have just been you breaking up, but you left out Chip Kelly, who, off the top, he was one of the top three, I would say, most anticipated hires. Him and Scott Frost, who you mentioned is 0-6. And Scott Frost is digging himself a hole early on, just this past weekend, I believe, they asked him about the defense giving up the game-winning drive, and his response was, "I don't coach defense." Basically throwing the defensive coordinator under the bus. And you can't do that as a head coach. And I think, yeah, he's hitting rough times. I don't know how close, just from the Big Ten, and we're going to hit some more Big Ten stuff later in the show like we always do, but he was trying to block a transfer to Oregon State, saying that their semester didn't line up. But then he had no problem taking a transfer from UCF after he lost his other quarterbacks, and now miraculously gets a waiver that he's eligible to play right away. So kind of a hypocrite there. And I honestly think it's going to come back to bite him in the ass. So you could say poor fit. I mean, maybe tending on arrogance for Scott Frost. And I'll be surprised if he can turn it around, because once you dig a hole, you're under that. Now, Jimbo Fisher didn't have that. I think A&M had a culture problem when Manziel was there, and he's able to just turn it around by getting them to focus on football. And to be honest, is that even turning it around? Because with that record, you're beating up on the non-conference cupcakes that everyone in the SEC schedules. You only have 8 conference games, so 5-6 wins isn't that far of a stretch whenever you're playing a 12-game schedule. 4 cupcakes, 4 wins. You only have to win 2 games in conference to be bowl eligible. What's he going to do long term?
But it is in the SEC, though, and it just means more.
You say that. We're going to get into some of the playoff stuff later on, but they're already pimping that SEC should still get 2 teams in after that Georgia beatdown. So we'll circle back around on that stuff. We're going to get into that coaching stuff later on in the show. Rick, what do you got for high tempo this week?
This is the best week in sports, coming up here, and with everything happening, Major League Baseball playoffs, hockey's starting. Football's in the middle of the season right now, so you're seeing a lot of college football, 2/3 of the way done. So we have a lot of things happening here, and this is a great time in sports. This week, next week, and the week before, these weeks are great. This one's a great week coming up here. So many things are happening. Perfect time. If you're not a sports fan, then I know what you're doing. You're probably watching the terrible NBC shows that are just absolutely tanking in ratings right now. So, but if you're a sports fan, you're like me, and this is what's killing me. The Major League Baseball playoffs are off, and I'm watching on my phone, kind of. So I will say it's a great week in sports. Sox won today, so we'll wait and see what happens in the National League game. Brewers are already up in the series, so great things are happening here. It's just continued fun. You can find something every freaking night of the week to watch. There is not a night of the week where you can't be like, there's nothing good on sports. There is some good sports game happening somewhere. So, awesome time. Recommend tuning into your tube and watching it. But if you're a Major League Baseball fan, most of you probably don't have FS1 to watch some of the games. So, whatever it is, great times. So,
all right, let's roll with that Steel City update. I threw on Pirates watching the MLB playoffs because, of course, they're at home. And I had the same thing you said, Rick. I think both Brewers and Red Sox are up 2-1 right now. But the
correct.
Brewers are playing
at this minute.
Yes, Brewers and Dodgers are playing right now, Game 4. So that will be yet to be seen. And just looking at the series, I'm kind of shocked. On face value, I mean, you have Houston and the Dodgers both played in the World Series last year. They look to be the favorites, both down, facing the same deficit. What do you think going forward? Who do you predict is going to make it to the World Series?
I like the Brewers. I really like the Brewers. I know you could call me a Brewers homer and everything for going many games out in spring training and catching them here. I mean,
we do.
The thing is about the Brewers, I like more than I like the Dodgers. The Brewers have that better bullpen. And remember the Indians, they made that run only because, they had some good hitters, but that bullpen dominated. I mean, you got Soria, you got Nebel, you got Jeffries in that bullpen. Those three guys are, three solid ones. I mean, if the Dodgers can get to the 8th inning, they got the 9th inning, they got Jensen. That helps them out a lot. I like the Brewers. I think the Brewers have better bats, too. And I really like Christian Yelich. I know I already gave my MVP award to Baez, but Yelich is playing a heck of a season, having a great, playoffs, too. I really like what these guys are doing. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to somebody, and I know MLB's starting to do this and other things. Eric Kratz is late 30s, playing here, playing great. When the Brewers started the season, they had 4 good catchers. They had Stephen Vogt, Manny Pena, Jacob Nottingham, and Andrew Sukic, who all could be starters with a lot of major league teams. And now they were so desperate, they had to go trade the Yankees for a AAA catcher to come start because they were desperate that much because Sukic got demoted, and then he eventually got released, and then Vogt got injured, Manny Pena got injured too. But I mean, Eric Kratz is a great story, good pitch caller, and at one time a former Pirate. So there's another one for you, another former Pirate that's now in the the World Series, and good for him. So, but I'm really cheering for the Brewers. I like the Astros too. I think they got a good bullpen. They got the better hitters too. I mean, Boston has some great hitters too. I mean, I give a slight edge to the Astros overall because they're better at mixing and matching. So,
Matt, who do you think?
Great.
I agree with Mish.
I think you're right on the Brewers, but not for all that stat stuff that you threw out there. I think just because they're hot. And I think they fizzle. I don't think they win at all. I think they get to the World Series, and I think they face the Red Sox. And I think the Red Sox have that same edge, but they just have better depth. And I think that comes into play.
Red Sox have a better rotation, too. I'll give the Red Sox credit. They have a better rotation, but they got to take David Price out of that rotation and stick him in the bullpen. He is not good in starting in postseason. I think he's now the worst starting pitcher to pitch so many games as a starter in the postseason. He's that bad. They got to figure out something there in a hurry.
Well, as we saw last year, one bad starter can lose the series for you. Happened with the Dodgers. So,
and you remember when Tampa Bay made the run in 7 or 8? Price was their closer / 8th inning guy. He was their setup guy. he wasn't the starter when they were making the run. He was the back end guy because he just came out of the minor leagues, was a top draft pick, and he was all this hype and everything. So I mean, I could see him doing that role again. He could go 8, and then you have Kimball 9 with his pine tar on his hands. So I mean that's a good thing. So,
are you accusing him of cheating?
You know what? The picture doesn't lie, and I agree that's pine tar. I mean, sorry.
Speaking of cheating,
I'm like anti-Red Sox. I'm not a big Red Sox fan because they're a big market team, but I will say it looks like pine tar, and that's a little disappointing. Because anymore nowadays, it's so easy to catch players cheating because there's so many cameras at a game. This isn't the 80s where there were like 6. There's like 20 to 30 to 40 cameras depending upon the game.
Well, I'll say, sticking with cheating in our transition, I can't give an opinion. I didn't see it, but I'll look into it and try to find evidence, tweet that out. But they did ESPN's been doing their 30 for 30s, and they're throwing it on their new network. But they throw the podcast up for free as like a hype, and they threw up one for Jose Canseco, and it is hilarious. He's like doing his tell-all, how no one believed him. And the whole reason he wrote his book, he called Tommy Lasorda out. Tommy Lasorda, he said, one spring training, he told the media that Jose Canseco was out of shape, and Jose called him a fat little troll. Mm-hmm. And said, there's no way that little guy is going to tell me that I'm out of shape. And that's whenever he went and decided he's going to write his book. So there you go. Inside stuff. Very funny. I suggest looking it out. If you search ESPN 30 for 30 Canseco, I'm sure the interview will come up, but I laughed. Pretty funny. So let's get into some hockey now. Like Rick said, right in the middle of the start. Not a good start for the Penguins. I've been going back and forth with some friends on this. Defense, and I would say goalie. Did we mention last week the Matt Murray concussion stuff? Because I had some texts about that after the show, and I think we talked about it. It
broke right beforehand. It probably broke like an hour or two beforehand. Yes.
I got some stuff sent to me that I'll put out on our Twitter and possibly our Facebook. If I can do some type of digest, I got to look into it. Haven't posted on Facebook that much, but had some stuff sent to me that kind of reaffirms that, where some of the major hockey writers are now starting to notice the same things that I noticed. Because once you get so many concussions, a hockey puck is coming at you hundreds of miles an hour, and you have to have that fast muscle fiber, and that's why a lot of goalies don't last. It's very rare for a goalie to last decades in the league, and that's why the ones that do most likely are Hall of Famer, multi-champion goalies. So something to keep an eye on, and I don't think the defense is doing him any favors. Stat I have this week, 28th in shots allowed. That's 4th worst in the league, and when your defense is that bad, you're going to take shots, and if you're not 100%, you're going to give them up. So tough start. I don't know what they do. I've been shooting the breeze. A couple people, big Penguins fans, think that they should trade for another goalie. What do you guys think of that?
I don't think it hurts them, but I will say when they were competing for the Stanley Cup, the one thing that they did well was they kept the trash clear around the goal. And when they struggle, it's because the defenders are too busy trying to push the puck down the ice and trying to get involved too much with the offense. I think that's why with the early part of the year here, you're seeing it's boom or bust. They're scoring a lot of goals or they're losing. And I think that's reflective of them trying to push the tempo down the ice.
And that's something they can settle into too. Rick, what do you think?
The problem is you have to go back to the cap. They're pretty close to the cap right now. Schultz is injured for 4 months after the surgery, so you could put him on long-term IR, which frees up money that way. So, but the problem is with freeing up money, you're not freeing up a lot to bring anybody in. And what are you going to trade? Because you're going to need so many bodies, so you can't trade like John Sebastian Day or somebody else or Sprong or something. I mean, I'm looking at the goalie numbers right now. Goals against average for Murray is 5.47, which is awful. and DeSmith is a 2.4, which is okay. I mean, what I could really see what may be happening, because Tristan Jarry just got sent to the minors. Maybe he gets brought back up or something along those lines. Maybe they give him some more playing time. I mean, really, between all three of them, they're all three capable NHL goalies. I mean, so without them, I know it's easier to bench DeSmith in the NHL and have your two best be starters right now. I don't know. But the problem is Schultz is now out, so you're probably going to have to play other defensemen to do it. And you guys mentioned it. The defense through different years was better at clearing the puck out, getting the puck up, starting the rush. I mean, remember, when Schultz came here, he was the 7 guy. And now he's probably 3 before he got injured, probably Letang, and you could say Mata. Mata's played awful this year. I don't know if I can't remember if it's you guys or another group of friends. I already gave out the least valuable player award for the first 3 games. I gave it to Ole Mata because he's just awful. Just skating around, not being able to clear the puck out and everything. They did spend the money on Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson, 0 points. Spent all that money on a guy who got 0 points. So that's another problem. You spend big money and you're not getting returns on it. I don't know what to say. So, and they want to cut Letang's time down. I don't understand how, because Mata stinks, Schultz is injured, and Jack Johnson's not doing anything, not helping out in the offense. I will say that I think the power play is good. It could be a lot better, but it's really good right now. And the penalty kill is right now, we have the 3rd best in penalty kill. Bringing Cullen back helped out in the penalty kill, but that's the other problem. I mean, you got great forwards. Your defense is awful. So I don't know what you do. I think that's a good question. I think you need a new defensive scheme.
Yeah, even trading
the
for
other
a
teams
goalie,
already figured out this scheme.
Yeah, even trading for a goalie or a defender, who are you going to give up? At this point, because it's going to be a salary hit, it's going to be tough to maneuver, at least this season, into a deal. I just don't know.
And you're right against the cap right now. I forget how much. They're less than $1 million away from the cap. So, I mean, you're stuck. And nobody's going to trade away a low-price guy right now. So, not unless they eat all the contract. And I don't see a team doing that except for maybe Arizona, because they're so bad, So, everybody's still got a shot right now.
Yep, we'll see what's coming up. We'll get back into that. Circling around to a more positive note, Steelers, last-minute win against the Bengals. And I said, I think I told you guys right when it happened, definitely a pick play. They ran a slant down, or were they down 1? Was it tied? Last drive, I think they were down 1 at the time. I could be wrong. But they ran a slant to Antonio Brown. Number 11, is that Washington?
Justin
Hunter ran out, definitely blocked the guy right in front of Brown, which sprang him for a touchdown. I think they just needed a field goal to win at the time. So really, it would have been a huge killer to get that called, but the NFL refs aren't going to call it. And at that point, who cares? Take the win. It was a bold comeback. And the Bengals, I didn't realize they were so fruitless against the Steelers. They were what now? Steelers win 10 of the last 11. It's ridiculous. That's a Browns level. So basically, the Steelers have been getting almost 4 guaranteed wins a year, 2 against the Browns and 2 against the Bengals. That's how you get home field advantage in the playoffs. That's how you get buys, and hopefully that keeps continuing. Got one more on to bye week this week, and rumors, just before I let you guys go so I don't forget, rumors were that Le'Veon Bell was going to be back. He hasn't reported, and he hasn't contacted the Steelers on the bye week. I think he has to come back by, it's either week 8 or the following week. So we'll see. If he doesn't, Steelers can hold him out another year, I believe. So he's not an unrestricted free agent. He has to come and sign so that they can go ahead and have him sign the preferred tender or whatever it's called so that they can trade him next season. So he has to come back. He just hasn't reported. It is a bye week, so maybe he'll show up later. But as of now, what are you guys' thoughts on the game? Matt, we'll start with you.
I was actually kind of surprised by a couple different things. One, when before halftime, you had Cincinnati put in a 2-minute drill and score a touchdown before the half. And Pittsburgh allowed so many throws, and an issue that they've had is their secondary. I don't understand how you allow receivers to catch passes and get out of bounds. They should be protecting the sidelines and trying to keep the ball, make Cincinnati throw passes towards the middle of the field. They didn't do that. Cincinnati drove right down and scored. But how many times does Cincinnati have to taunt Pittsburgh before they realize that it comes back to bite them? I don't know if you guys saw this. After they scored the touchdown that put them ahead late in the game, they started taunting the dances that Juju and Brown do. And it's like, as soon as I saw that, I had flashbacks of Houshmandzadeh wiping his cleats with a terrible towel. It's like, you're up, but you left too much time on the clock. And no sooner did I get the thought out of my head, but Ben was marching them down the field and scored the go-ahead touchdown.
I thought the same thing, Matt. I saw it in the Steeler game, and I saw it in the Patriot game as well. Both the Steelers and the Patriots both came back because there was too much time left on the clock. Because I was watching the game, and it was whatever, like 11:30 at night, and I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, they're giving Brady like 3 minutes or 2 minutes to win with like 3 timeouts. I'm like, well, they just won. You just know that. And that's the thing I noticed about the Steelers. I'm like, yeah, they're going to win because you left too much time on the clock. And I kept thinking, and they kept complaining. Dan Fouts said it about 3 times, and I was starting to get annoyed with him. He's like, oh, these penalties are set up for the offense to make big plays and score big points. That's what the fans love, and blah, blah, blah. He said that about 3 different ways, about 3 different times during the game. And I kept thinking, going back after watching the Patriots game and thinking this at 11:30 at night, you're better off playing for that last possession because if you have a Brady or you have a Big Ben, they're going to have the players that come back and beat you. And I'm just thinking, like, is that what this is really about? The NFL is set up so that you watch to the last minute because these guys are going to win. Your superstars are going to win. And I mean, it was even that way Thursday night too. Rodgers came back and won. It's just like it's a reoccurring theme right now. Like, we got to play you close because we know we could torch you at the end. So I just thought the same exact thing. So watching football over the past couple of days,
it could be mental too. Some of those teams have the same quarterback, the same defense of players, at least the same leaders, year after year. And if you don't get over that hump, you're stuck knowing, well, they're just better. It's hard to get over that and get a win. And I think that's where you have some of the advantages for the Tom Brady's and the Ben Roethlisbergers over these opponents, because I thought back, wow, the Bengals were in a couple different playoff runs, or at least in the playoffs, and yet they couldn't beat the Steelers in the regular season. It just didn't add up that they would have so many opportunities and not be closer to at least 25, 30% winning percentage. And you would think that after so many tries, you're just bound to get a couple. It's not like the Steelers were world beaters every year. They went through some years with bad offensive line play, bad defense, but if it's mental, you're never going to win. So, any other games catch your guys' eye?
Nothing really outside those couple games. And I mean, I'm going to give credit to the old Iowa quarterback, Beathard. He played actually a pretty good game as a backup quarterback. So, not knowing much outside of remembering the Iowa games against Penn State and Michigan and everything that they play, he's actually not a bad quarterback. He's pretty good. I mean, I don't think he's Nate Peterman good, because Nate Peterman is so good and he's just so good. I
was
mean,
waiting for it.
I know, I had to do it. But I mean, when you say that you're better than Josh Allen, and how many pick sixes has he thrown? I mean, over his career. He also has an NFL record for throwing 5 interceptions the quickest amount of time frame ever. I mean, I don't get him, but whatever. But I mean, I think that's the other thing too. You mentioned it, Rich. Solid NFL quarterbacking. You need that to go on. If you don't have that, you stink. You're done. You got to have a solid quarterback. So
it doesn't even have to be great. Doesn't even have to be great. Look at all those guys that are in the year, or in the league for like 8-10 years. Look at Carson Palmer. Now, maybe after his knee injury or before his knee injury, he might have had a different trajectory, but you just have to be serviceable. Alex Smith, you could argue the year with Harbaugh, he was like over the top. That didn't stop him from getting demoted and traded. So you just have to be able to win games. It's starting to look like Kirk Cousins is that quarterback, the guy who gets wins and is going to be average. They're so hit or miss. That's basically the mark of one of those quarterbacks. Same with like Matt Stafford right now. Kill the Patriots, get blown out, can't score on whoever. It doesn't even matter who they play. It's just so hot or cold that you can be good a couple games and then great some other ones. One other thing, Calvin Ridley got hurt, or he's out. So that's going to change the Falcons. And that NFC South looked like a gauntlet. It's not so much anymore. Buccaneers, who knows what happened to their defense? I think they fired their defensive coordinator.
They did. Yeah, it was the old Atlanta coach.
Yep, Mike Smith, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So right in the middle of the season, they started so hot. If you remember the Fitzgerald, whatever their hashtag was, with him making Fitzmagic. And now look at him. A complete 180 in the middle of the year. So it's just the cream's going to rise to the top every time. And the Steelers is bad. I'll even say I was wrong on the show because I had said I didn't see a win in the next 5 games for the Steelers, and they ended up 3-2 in those games after the tie and are now sitting, making a run. So got the bye week, and next week we'll hit on. They have 2 rivalry games coming up. I think it's Browns first and then the Ravens. Mm-hmm. And that will pretty much set the course for the division. They'll play. The only other game they'll have in the division left is the Bengals. So definitely have a good chance in the next 3 weeks to see a better picture for them.
Completely unrelated. I still am trying to figure out what the hell Gruden is doing with the Raiders. How do you lose 27-3 to the Seahawks?
Well, that's where I was going to go with this.
Seahawks have been they've been all defense all year, and I know Khalil Mack's agent is also the same agent for Amari Cooper and Carl Joseph, who are arguably the two of the better players on their team right now. And now it's rumored that they're being shopped around as well. I don't know if it's just an axe to grind against that agent or what he's trying to do, but it just looks like an absolute train wreck in Oakland right now.
I agree with you, Matt. And their one win was against the Browns, and they only won by 3 points. 3 points. So that's not even a win. They've lost most of their games by like 20 points. Like, they're getting blown out. It's not even close. It's blowout wins. And the nice thing is the Steelers have them at the end of the year. When you need a win at the end of the year, they got Raiders on that schedule at the end of the year. That's going to help you out because this team's looking bad.
But that doesn't help Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh will play them and the Raiders will win by 25 for no reason. That'll be a game that they'll just look like a Pop Warner team.
That's true, too. They always have that one game where they play down to the opponent.
That's like every game.
No reason. Oh.
They always play to the level of the opponent. Every single week. Browns, you could tie them. Whoever they're playing that's hot, got them. Bengals hot, got them. So, I don't know, but I was going to bring up Gruden because we talked about new coaches in college. Taking a look at the new coaches in the NFL. Gruden, by far, worst hire. I don't know if the GM thing, and I think this should be the thing that everyone hands owners whenever they're thinking of hiring a coach /GM. this should be the final one. I don't remember it ever working. And first thing, get rid of Khalil Mack. Now you had a team that was a playoff team. This is a playoff team. And they are playing so poorly that they could get the number 1 pick in the draft. And they're paying $10 million a year for it. I got to feel for all the Tennessee fans, all the Tennessee Volunteer fans. I wanted them to have Gruden. I'm glad you guys didn't get him. The game has passed him by. So you can tell all the commentators being in the booth, that's for a reason. So, I mean, I don't even know. I'm thinking of some of the other ones. Kyle Shanahan, I don't know if he was there. This might be his second year with the 49ers. Supposed to be a hot hire. Nothing. Beathard's playing decent, but with no defense or anything, come on. I know Jed York is a poor owner, one of the worst in the league, if not the worst. And you're there. You're supposed to be making strides, but that franchise has been a dumpster fire for the past, 20 years now? After the Steve Young concussion, you had some Jeff Garcia years, and then it's been a complete dumpster fire. The only blip is the Harbaugh blip for like 2 years or whatever, 3 years, however long he was there, where they went to the Super Bowl and a couple NFC championship games. Outside of that, you're looking at countless top 10 draft picks, and it's going to continue this year. So I don't even know. What were some of the other newer hires in the league?
Frank Wright at Indy, and he's doing awful. They're 1-5. And I mean, they're just doing nothing. He was supposed to be the Eagles' genius, and that's a winnable division. Tennessee's not that good. Houston's not that good, and Jacksonville's tanking too.
Jacksonville was looking good for 1 week.
Superstar team. Yeah,
and they're down. So I don't know. Maybe it means something to just have some consistency at head coach.
Giants are looking bad. Real bad.
Giants, you mean the Saquon Barkley's out there?
Pretty much, that should be the Giants' offense. Just give the ball to Barkley. Let him pass. Let him throw. Let him do whatever. Just give him the ball.
Well, Rick,
he's their only hope.
Since you brought this up, I just have to say it. I don't care about Eli Manning or his feelings, because every pregame show that I turned on Sunday were like, oh, I just feel bad for Eli. The Giants, they owe it to him to keep playing him and not get rid of him. I was thinking, what do they owe him for? What do they owe him? He won 2 Super Bowls. Great. That seems to be the highest a Manning can do. 2 Super Bowl wins. Can't get any better than that. So cut bait. Cut him. Let him go. Let him go to one of these other teams that you know is going to take a chance on him. But the Giants don't owe it to him. They're going to have an empty stadium. Odell Beckham's tearing that team apart. I think the owner finally came out yesterday or today and said that he needs to focus on playing football more and quit talking. I don't know if it was even to the media. But it's basically an Eli Manning problem. Eli Manning can't do the job. He would have been benched or fired or traded months ago if it wasn't for his name. So no, I don't feel bad for him. So that's my last NFL thought. You guys have anything else? We can go around the horn. Matt, you got anything?
No, I mean, I'm just curious to see how, if anything else ends up playing out from all of this Oakland stuff. Because you were saying about GMs, and one of the people that I think has been successful relatively recently is Parcells in that GM type role, where he's able to get his players and make his system work. But I think he built his teams the opposite end. He started with the Khalil Macks and started with his defense, got the offensive line, and then waited for that. The last piece was his quarterbacks, where with Gruden being an offensive mind, trying to build from the offense and trading pieces away, I think is coming back to bite him in a major way.
I will add that the Pro Football Focus put out their rookie drafts, and the one good thing the Raiders did was they took a chance on Mo Hurst, and he's the 4th most valuable rookie defender this year out of Michigan. You remember he had that heart thing that the doctors cleared him, but all the teams stayed away. They got him in the 5th round. Complete steal. He has been the one bright spot on that defense. So a big shout out to him and Matt, their number 1 guy overall, Derwin James. I figured you'd like to hear that. So definitely out there. That's the only bright thing I found doing some research on the Raiders, because I knew I'm going to have to bring up John Gruden. After being on his defense, I'm finally going to have to go in and admit it. So look for that tweet later about John Gruden being an awful hire. Ricky, got anything else on the NFL?
Nothing much, but I'm going to be interested to see if there are trades this year. I think this could be the year of trades. There could be a couple down at the deadline, maybe 3, 4, 5. And it wouldn't surprise me if you see some older faces go. If some of these teams decide, instead of wait to the end of the year to cut them, do we cut them now? And I mean, think of a guy like Eli Manning. Could he help another team? I'll say it. He could be a great spot for Denver.
Bills.
Denver.
There's no way.
Josh Allen.
There's no way Eli Manning would ever be traded. And I don't understand what the whole Darling situation is with him. It's like they want him to be Peyton so bad, but he can't.
Yeah. But look at the spot. Case Keenum's had some bad weeks. He could be the guy to step in. I know Case Keenum's had 300-yard passing games for the past 2 weeks. But he could be the guy. I mean, would there be another NFL quarterback that could be moved in a way, too? So that's the other thing. I mean, Tom Savage just got signed today by the 49ers. So that tells you how bad some teams are desperate right now, too. So.
Rick, I feel like you have a thing for Pitt quarterbacks. You're always bringing them up on the show. You know all their stats.
We got some Pitt people who watch in attendance, so I like mentioning about. I mean, I like sending out pictures where Nate Peterman thinks he's the best quarterback on the roster. I don't understand. I can't wait for him to get picked off 3 times. I don't get it. The guy's not good. He's not good.
Wait, Rick.
His NFL record is not a good one.
You can be better. You can get better as your career goes on. That's usually how it works.
Not with the Bills roster, though. Come on. If he was on the Patriots, yes, he would get better because he has so many weapons. I mean,
on the Patriots, they don't have that many weapons.
They have Gronk, Edelman. I mean, trying to think who else.
Don't get a handful there, Rick.
I could throw the James White out of the backfield because that's apparently the thing to do. I have Sonny Michel I could just hand the ball off to constantly. So, I mean, they got some more weapons than the Bills. I can't even name 2 of their receivers right now. Kelvin Benjamin. There. I got one. But yeah, I mean, there's just more weapons there and everything. But I don't know. I think this could be the year of trades. I think some teams need help. And there are crazy GMs out there, too. So I think that's the other thing.
All right, we'll see. That's it for the NFL. We're going to get into some college football. I'm going to start it right off with the mailbag question. And it came in, I called this week Nightmare Week for Penn State. Anytime you play Michigan State is basically Nightmare Week because they're going to be hyped up more than they should. No matter what the line is, they're always going to come in, and they're most likely going to get that upset win. They're going to get the upset win, and they're going to celebrate like it. So, Rick, you watched the game.
I did.
Penn State looked ugly. They let Michigan State get that win. So the question is James Franklin now on the hot seat?
No.
Matt?
100% no.
Oh, it's a little bit early. I think he beat Pitt, and he is winning right now. He's due for he always has these kind of slip ups every year. So I don't know that he's on the hot seat because I don't know what the bar truly should be set at for Penn State.
That's a good point. Because Penn State, are they looking for double-digit wins every year? Are they looking for division championships? Are they looking for playoff appearances? And right now, what is Penn State's record? How many wins do they have? I know they have 2 losses. Is it 5,
Oh,
6?
geez.
I don't even know how many games they played yet.
They already had the bye, so I think they're 5.
5-2.
I
So
think. It's either 5-2 or 4-2, and I'm blanking why. I'll look it up real quick. Go ahead.
doesn't matter anyway. They have the trap game this week at Indiana, which everyone. I mean, you're playing Indiana. It seems like they always give a good game. They just never win. I assume they're bound to win one, but now Penn State has to win that game. They have to play Iowa. Then they go to Michigan, and they still have Wisconsin on the schedule. So there's realistically a chance, even out of those 4 games, that you could drop 2, possibly 3. I don't think they drop all 4. And then you also have a Maryland team at the end of the year that's so Jekyll and Hyde. Do you get the Texas Maryland, or do you get the Toledo Maryland? Or I think it was Toledo or Temple. Which one of those teams blew them out? They're Jekyll and Hyde, so you don't know. And right now, I think this season, he's right on the verge of the hot seat. He only has, they do it the Harbaugh, they only have, they always throw up his wins against rivals. Franklin's worse than Harbaugh right now. He only has 3 wins, 1-2 against Michigan, 1-3 against Michigan State now. And is it 1-3 against Ohio State? 1 win against each team.
Yeah.
So
I know it's 1-0 against Ohio State.
So it's not looking good. Every year you're only getting 1 of them. You got lucky once and beat 2 out of the 3 the Big Ten championship year, but the other one you got blown out by. You need to consistently win, and I think this is when the wheels fall off. If he doesn't win at least 9 games this year, which is looking like he might not, how do you keep recruiting at the level that he's recruiting at? And once recruiting goes, he's done, because that's right now his edge. It's not his in-game coaching. Anyone can watch a game and tell me that he's making adjustments. I'll just laugh. The Michigan State final drive was a ridiculous display of, we're just going to win this game here. And I don't even think that they listened to their coach. The receiver said that the coach wanted him to run a different route. And he said, nah, Penn State's up. I'll just beat them deep. And he went and got the touchdown. Because Penn State was still, they weren't jamming, but he was up to the point where he could just blow right by him. That's 100% on the coaching. Whenever it's 30 seconds left, 10 seconds left. I don't even know how many seconds were left when they scored that touchdown. But you don't have help over the top. It was 1-on-1 with the guy doing a press, but he wasn't jamming him. 100% on the coaches. So I don't know.
Well,
Rick, go ahead, Matt.
I'll play devil's advocate with it, because we've talked about this before with Pitt. Let's say that Penn State drops 2 or 3 down the stretch here, and you fire Franklin. Who do you bring in? Who with Franklin leaving, who would want that? And then coming into that, because knowing that you're still going to end up having to play your Ohio States and your Michigans every year, and potentially Wisconsin's weeding itself out, that puts you at a disadvantage, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say I'm putting him on the hot seat. I don't think he would get fired. Penn State would be idiotic to fire him this year. I'm just saying that if he's on the hot seat and recruits feel it, you're going to lose your top recruits, and then the wheels are going to fall off. And that's where he's definitely gone in a year or 2 after this. But to your point, you have to fire. It's the same thing. I've seen Rutgers fans saying the same thing. Who do we hire? At a smaller school, you should go get a guy like Bo Pelini, a guy that was winning 9 games a year in the Big Ten. That's where Rutgers needs to start. Penn State could probably do better. They could try to find another guy like Tom Herman at Texas, which we don't even know if that's a good hire. I don't know. I think teams were too late pulling the Chip Kelly card, but that would have been a great hire a couple years ago. I just think that it's past the wayside. And I think Penn State still has the capability to poach. I mean, they poached James Franklin from an SEC team, Vanderbilt. So they can pick and choose who they want. I think the one thing that's really shocking, if you look at it, Franklin has been losing a lot of recruits to Georgia. and other Southern teams from the Philadelphia area, where sure, you're going to lose some of them to Ohio State. You're going to lose some of them to Michigan. They're in your backyard. It's going to be really tough when you have schools like Georgia and Miami taking top talent out of your backyard. And it's only going to get worse if you're not winning those games. Because all the Georgia coach has to do is say, remember when we played in the national championship? Even though Georgia looked like garbage on Saturday anyway. So, I don't know. It's going to come down to, can they pull a top recruit or a top coach? I believe so. If Nebraska can pull a guy like Scott Frost, even though, yeah, he was an alum, Penn State can get that splash higher to take them to the next level. And they might not even need to, because Urban Meyer still, his question's up in the air. And speaking of him, he was pressuring, the rumors are that he was pressuring, is it Nick Bosa? Which one of the Bosas is on the team this year?
Nick.
He kept saying that Nick Bosa was coming back in a couple weeks. Well, his dad and his family went and got him a second opinion. And I think today he made the call that he's going to go directly to the NFL. So I know it's kind of rumors at this point, but if you're getting pressured by a coach like that, who's already stressed out, he had headaches on the sideline, was that this past week or the week before, where he was physically on the ground holding his head. If he's gone, I could see James Franklin stealing a ton of recruits that Ohio State would have gotten, because you're not going to get a better recruiter than Urban Meyer. And maybe that's what it takes for him to get over the edge. So if he can hold out for potentially 1 or 2 more seasons until Urban Meyer's health gets to him, James Franklin's right there. He would immediately become one of the top recruiters one of the top 2, if not the best recruiter in the conference. So, Rick, what are your thoughts? You're a Penn State guy.
I think you kind of hit on it in a way that a couple of things. We aren't getting the 5 stars as much as Ohio State and Michigan, so that's one thing that's playing into the factors. A second thing is, they don't have the good assistant coaches like they have had in the past. Moorhead's gone. Moorhead upset and won this week. So, but I mean, that's the other thing too. They keep losing their top assistants, and we haven't. The assistant coach, like they jokingly said, "Oh, the offensive coordinator caused the offensive plays and everything." And that's the problem. It's the play calling and the selection down at the end of the game. And let me read this to you. This was sent to me by my good friend who's a huge Penn State fan. In Penn State's last 5 losses, Penn State has started 11 drives with 10 minutes to go or less. And they have scored on none of them, and their drives have averaged 14 yards. That's their problem. It goes back to what we were saying about Tom Brady and Big Ben and, Aaron Rodgers. You leave too much time on the clock for the other team to get the ball back and score points. And that's what happened. Penn State needed a first down. They needed that first down. They couldn't do it. Punted to Michigan State. Michigan State takes it and scores. We don't have enough time to go down the field and score. And that's really the problem. And I mean, it's like, that seems to be the reoccurring theme. It's like, who scores last wins, And that's the problem I see with Penn State is, similar to other teams, they can't finish games right now against big-time opponents. They almost have to blow the team out, because if you're playing in a tight game at the end, you can't. And the thing is, too, I mean, you got to be able to catch the ball, and you got to be able to run the ball at different times. And I think at the end, and I think this goes to Matt's point, is when you're calling the plays and everything, the other team is already noticing, hey, this is this, and this is what you're going to do. Like Ohio State in the 4th down 5, they already knew it was a running play. They knew that was a running play on that stuff at the run. So I think that's the problem too. These teams already know what you're doing. They're not cheating. They're not stealing your signs, but they're looking and be like, okay, they're going to run the ball here. Like they already can tell that. So, and I think that's the problem. There's no, I don't know how to say it. There's no creativity or anything to second guess them. Hey, they may not, they could pass or run here. They could do this. They could do that. And I mean, I just think there needs to be something along those lines, just a little bit spice, a little bit different. So, throw a little bit different, Instead of having a hamburger, make it a cheeseburger. That's what they got to do. Something a little bit different here, The same old thing isn't getting it done.
Do you think
that's the Big Ten of the 1990s and the 80s? The same old thing. We're just going to pound the ball on you nonstop. That era's done.
That was my next question. Do you think it is because they've went to more of the spread runs, and when it comes down to it, they are not able to get under the center and just run the ball down your throat like Alabama can? Like, they can do the spread, but they can, when it comes to it, they're also able to just turn on the road grading and say, all right, we're just gonna knock you back. Penn State can't do that. They can't grind out wins, even against smaller teams like App State. If you can't grind some clock out, and it's not because they're scoring fast and it's a Big 12 like 50, 54 to 55 shootout. These are 20, 30-point games like the one against Michigan State. What was that final score? Like, was it 17-14 or something similar?
I'll look it up here real quick.
I mean, it was in the teens, I believe. So they weren't putting up 40 points on Michigan State.
21-17.
Yeah, they had 17. So you can't tell me that Penn State, oh, no, their offense, they're not able to grind out the clock because they're scoring too fast. That's not it. They're not able to get the clock running. And like you said, when they punted at that last punt, there was, a minute left? They couldn't even run an extra minute off the clock. I think one of the running backs run out of bounds or something like that to even stop the clock and save one of the Michigan State timeouts, if I remember that game correctly. So they're not able to push. And I think you need to be able to do both. And I'll bring up the other big game we highlighted last week, the Michigan versus Wisconsin game. I think that's where you see the contrasting styles where Michigan's able to run some of the spread option. Shea Patterson runs 81 yards early in the game. And then the second half, 0 passing yards. They had 0 passing yards in the second half. They ran for 200 yards on Wisconsin because they switched it up and they said, all right, we're going to run the clock out and we're just going to pound these guys away. And right now, I don't know if it's the recruits Franklin's bringing in, but they can't do that. And I think that's what's going to take. That's what's going to take you to the next level. If you get into a quality opponent and you're not able to push them around, then you're going to have a chance. They're going to have a chance to score that last minute touchdown. And I think those were the two contrasting games where you can really see it. Can you put the team away or not with your style? And I don't know what they can do differently. Barkley himself was a huge loss because he could get yards after contact, and they were able to put teams away running their spread or even their reads and their delays, when normally you can't do that. Put 8 guys in the box, you're going to stop it. And Matt, you're a coach. What do you think they could do differently? And it's not just Penn State. It's pretty much all spread teams. When you get to a certain point, you're not able to grind the clock out. Look at the Oklahomas against Army. That game went to overtime. Army was eating clock up. They couldn't control the ball.
Well, I think part of it is you don't get yourself into predictable situations. So in order, you got to win first and second down is the key. Once you do that, that's where you really gain an advantage offensively. When you lose on first down, so if you throw a pass on first down and now you're at second and 10, and you try to either throw another pass and it's incomplete or you run for 1 yard. Now you're at 3rd and 9, and you don't even have to be a football fanatic to understand they got to do something deeper to try to push the ball down the field. I think when you find yourself in too many predictable situations, that's where it comes back to bite you. And so you have to rely on just throwing the ball up and hoping that you get the call. And I think that's kind of what ends up happening. Why we're getting into more offensive-based things is because it's turned into throw the jump ball up, throw the fades, and see what they can do. You know, I think that's where you're starting to see, like outside of the service academies in Georgia Tech, you're seeing a lot of teams that just run the spread because you want to try to get athletes in space. So is it designing packages to put the ball in their hands, whether it's screens, whether it's extended throws? I know with our team, one of the things that we try to do is look at our run game to see how can we get the ball on the edge and how can we get the ball into the hands of our best players.
I'll use that. That's a good point because it doesn't have to be the old line them up and run it down your throat, like the Michigan example I gave. And I'll use this to transition into the ACC. What Pitt did when they were successful against Penn State, even last year and the year before, they were running a lot of shovel passes right underneath. So they knew that Penn State was going to be aggressive and go ahead, do that shovel pass, whatever it's called, and get 2 or 3 yards. It's better than a delay because once their linemen are already getting penetration on you, you run a delay handoff, it's dead. Look at the Ohio State last play for Penn State. But you can use that aggression against them. Run some screens, run some of those. It's almost like you're controlling the game on the ground by taking high completion percentage throws. So going to use that into the ACC now with Pitt. Pitt finds himself in a rare chance for a 7-way tie in whatever they call that division. So here's the scenario. Miami needs 2 more wins only. They have to beat Virginia Tech and Duke and lose the rest of their games. Virginia Tech has to beat Pitt. Pitt beats Miami and Virginia. Virginia beats Virginia Tech and UNC. UNC beats Georgia Tech and Duke. Duke beats Pitt, Virginia, and Wake. And Georgia Tech beats Miami, Virginia Tech, and Virginia. A lot of stuff, but I'll go ahead and send this out. If that happens and the ACC is tied, this is what their tiebreaker is, and this is how I became aware of this scenario. So the tiebreaker in the ACC is the team with the higher ranking in Sports Source analytics following the conclusion of their games. Whoever Source Sports is, never heard of them. Sports Source, whatever. Geez, that's a mouthful. They pick the winning team. So the craziest tiebreaker I've ever heard of is some company that no one has ever heard of will pick your champion if you get into a tie and everything else is considered equal.
You might as well. I mean, it doesn't hurt when you're if you end up with a 7-way tie. Should just be Notre Dame and Clemson.
Well, it might not even be a 7-way tie. It could be any tie. After a certain point, they that's like I don't even know what the numbers are. They go down. It's like head to head, then all this other stuff. A 3-way tie could get you the same result, depending on what. And that's what you get when you only have an 8-game conference schedule. I think those type of scenarios, you don't have that extra odd. If you have an odd conference game, that's really going to go ahead and let your other tiebreakers do their work. But when you have an even, this could happen. So I'm really cheering for this. The big one is going to be Virginia Tech losing all their games except for Pitt. And Georgia Tech actually has to win a couple games. So, highly doubtful. But Pitt is definitely still in it. On the other side, you have the bigger game. Didn't get chosen for game day. NC State and Clemson. Who do you guys got in this one, Matt? We'll start with you.
I just think Clemson's just in a tough spot right now. They were an early favorite to go to the college football playoff, but I actually wouldn't be surprised if NC State pulls the upset off. If NC State were in the SEC, their rank would probably be about 10 spots higher, just because of the bias.
Well, I think they would be higher too if they played West Virginia. I think the West Virginia game really hurts them. But go ahead.
But I don't even know if the West Virginia game helps or hurts, because with West Virginia losing and them getting, if they play that game and lose, and then West Virginia loses that game, then all it does, it makes them look bad. So they're still in a position where win your games. I mean, that's the thing with college, is that if you win out, no one has, unless you're UCF, it doesn't come back to bite you.
Rick, what do you think going into that game?
I'm going to take Clemson at home, but if you were a person that gambled, they're giving 16.5. There is no way that's going to be a 16.5 point difference. I mean, that's going to be like 7 points, 3-point win. That's not going to be 16.5. So I will take Clemson. They're at home. They should win at home. But 16.5, I'd bet against that one in a heartbeat. So
that is a crazy line.
Yeah, I'm surprised. It must be because Clemson's at home. It's a home game for them. That's
last time they were down there, NC State almost upset them, and they missed a field goal. But that was also the same year Pitt beat Clemson. So, I mean, those two would have been the death knell, and Penn State could have been in the playoffs that year if NC State would have been able to make that field goal and keep it out of overtime. But I think this is crazy that a lot of people are writing off, or at least writing down, that this game is going to decide the ACC championship when can't leave out your team, Matt, Florida State. I could see Florida State upsetting Notre Dame. I could see them beating either NC State or Clemson. Now, granted, the tiebreaker would go to the winner of this game, but there's still a couple other games that they could drop, Clemson or NC State. Clemson hasn't looked like world beaters. It's very plausible that they lose 2 or 3 games this year. And same with NC State. You don't know what you got. I could see NC State doing something, beating Clemson, losing to Florida State, and then losing to UNC, knowing that would have got them in the ACC championship game and giving Clemson the de facto in. That's just an NC State thing to do. So definitely looks like this could be the decider, but don't be surprised if NC State wins this game and then shits the bed and you're like, how did that happen? Because you heard it here first. NC State could win this game, lose to Florida State, and then lose to UNC to end the year, and then be eliminated from that championship game. But right now, this is going to be for the conference. I think Florida State has a chance to play spoiler in Willie Taggart's first year, and I think that's where you really get into some of the playoff scenarios. And right now, it's looking like the Big Ten and the ACC, or the SEC, have a chance to get 2 teams in. ACC, if they count Notre Dame as a full member, which they don't. So I would have SEC champ right now, Big Ten champ, Notre Dame, and then you're sitting at either Clemson, NC State. To be honest, I don't even know if they put undefeated NC State in. And that's where you get the name thing. Because I'll throw out a scenario for you. What if Georgia runs the table right now? They're the SEC champ. And then Alabama's that 4th team with 1 loss again. You really think they're going to put an undefeated NC State in over Alabama with 1 loss? Hell no. And that's not even the only school. Because they also have Ohio State in the same exact scenario. If Michigan runs the table right now, they get the Big Ten's playoff spot, but Ohio State is sitting there at what would it be, 11-1, with their only loss to playoff Michigan. The same exact scenario Alabama could be in. I don't see Alabama losing 2 games. So if one of these teams, LSU, knocks them off, or some other team, keeping them out of the SEC championship game, so they're stuck with 1 loss, same with Ohio State. Ohio State runs out, loses to Michigan. You're going to have 2 very prestigious programs sitting there. And it's not like last year. Go ahead.
I'll throw another wrench at you. What if UCF continues to win out? Mm-hmm. Granted, they haven't played top tier opponents this year, but if they continue to win out and they haven't lost, they didn't lose last year, they haven't lost this year. They claimed the national championship last year. How do you leave them out of the playoffs? Mm-hmm. They're a non-power 5. If you win your games, do you just continue to claim national championships?
Well, I'm laughing, but I think they could throw back the old line in this scenario. Because remember the old BCS line? We're going to take the highest ranked non-power conference or Notre Dame. So I could see the committee saying like, we would have put UCF in, but this year we got Notre Dame because they had wins over Michigan and Stanford and a couple other ranked teams, and UCF didn't. And I guarantee if it comes down to it, that's the reasoning they use to keep them out.
But I think this is a thing that we may have to keep an eye on over the next couple weeks, because this is where we talk about it right now, And at this point last year, everyone said, "Oh, they'll slip up. They'll slip up. They'll have that trap game." And they thought that they'd fall versus USF because they beat them earlier in the year, and then playing for their was it Atlantic 10, whatever, what
American
they
or
played,
something, I think.
Yeah,
American Atlantic.
I know
American Athletic, I think, isn't it? AAC.
Yes, I knew there was an A in it, but they won it. I mean, they did what they needed to do. And last year, the commentaries was they'll trip up, and the other pieces everyone else would win out. So all the Power Fives would push them out essentially. And I think you did have like that worst case scenario where you had Georgia and Alabama, where Georgia wins the conference, but Alabama is clearly one of the four best teams for the playoff. I don't think anyone was denying that, but the argument was always, is it your conference champion or is it the four best teams? Because that's two separate pieces. So I'm just curious to see how they play that out, because if it stands where these teams are knocking each other out the way the Big Ten has, the way the ACC has, potentially where the SEC will towards the end of the year with their rivalry games, if you see some upsets there, does that leave the door open for an undefeated UCF to get in? To me, I think you got to at least give them a seat at the table and see what they can do. They ran their mouths last year. They thought it was a fluke, and they're continuing to show that they have something there.
I'll say the opposite. They never gave Boise State a seat at the table, and they had a couple runs in a row. Utah, the same thing, until Utah then got into the Pac-12. I think right now...
BCS first playoff, though. Two different eras.
Well, it's the Invitational. It's not really a playoff. It's only 4 teams. You're not having champions in this. It's not really a true playoff. It's like a little invitational tournament thing going on. And I will say this. I think this is a year where we could potentially get that expanded playoffs, because you could have 4 of the biggest brands left right now as it stands in college football, potentially 5. Could you imagine if they were picking between Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Texas? All those executives would have huge hard-ons at that meeting. Like, oh boy, which teams do we get to pick this year? And UCF would never even could come close to being mentioned in that meeting. They could be undefeated, and you could have 1 or 2 loss Texas, 1 or 2 loss Ohio State, 1 or 2 loss Michigan, Alabama, whatever teams you want to throw in there. Even Notre Dame getting a loss or 2. I guarantee they would be above, just because those execs would say, look at this, it's finally working out. We can have Texas, we can have Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, or Michigan. Are you kidding me? As our top 4 teams? I wouldn't doubt it if they did anything to get Texas in there. So that's why I think they get left out. That's my final thoughts. It's very cynical, but you know it's going to go for that dollar. I mean, hell, ESPN already put how much money into the Longhorn Network. You don't think they're licking their chops right now? Like, oh, they already beat Oklahoma once. They can win out here. Even if they drop one more, you know they're going to have an excuse.
Well, they won't. I'll answer for you. No, they're not. They'll lose at least one more, possibly 2.
Rick, what do you think? College football?
I want to throw another team out there. We mentioned UCF. I'm going to throw out Cincinnati. Cincinnati has a chance to run the table this year.
Well, there's 3 teams in that. They all play each other.
And USF. They all have to play each other, and what will happen is probably one team will come out of that undefeated. Hopefully one. Hopefully they all don't give each other a loss. There's probably going to be one undefeated. It has a good chance it could be Cincinnati too. So is the UCF this year Cincinnati? Or is it the USF? I want to make sure I'm getting all my letters right. So, I mean, either one of these teams could run the table and go there. So, I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios. But I agree with you. It's all about the money. And even if Notre Dame has 1 loss versus Cincinnati has 0 losses, they're going to pick Notre Dame any day of the week. it's all about money and hype and selling tickets and everything along those lines. So
if it came down to it, I would say this too. They would pick Notre Dame, one-loss Notre Dame over undefeated Clemson. I'm sure of it. If let's say Texas runs the table and Ohio State and Alabama all run the table, they're going to take those three teams, Texas, Alabama, Ohio State, and then that fourth team, if they're sitting there looking at undefeated Clemson, one-loss Notre Dame, I would bet that they're going to put that one-loss Notre Dame in. And
fan base, money, and selling tickets.
And I think that's what they're getting when they put this 4-team tournament together. This year, finally, a couple of the brands that have been down, the Texases, the Michigans, are there right again. And you're going to be able to have your choice now of a couple of them, and they're going to shove as many of them as they can get in there. USC, if USC ran the table, they had 2 losses and a couple other things happened, you could see them get brought back into it. They would love to have USC in one of these playoff tournaments. So,
and that's almost where, if you're the UCF fan, is you got to hope for a bunch more upsets. I mean, you had a bunch this past weekend. West Virginia went down. Penn State went down. Trying to think who else. Now I'm blanking on a bunch of them. But it was 6, 7, 8 were all out, and everything else, all the numbers of last week. How many? And somebody out of the top 5 was gone too. Oklahoma. Yeah, so I mean, so I think if you're one of those teams, you have to hope for upsets.
I'll throw this out there.
I don't see it happening this week either. I mean, Tennessee's not going to beat Alabama. I mean, Purdue is definitely not going to beat Ohio State.
Oh, you'll say this. Michigan State will beat Michigan. Throw that out there on the record.
I could see Michigan still beating Michigan State. I mean, you almost have to hope for NC State to beat Clemson to knock them into a loss.
No, here's my scenario. The best scenario for UCF is if Michigan State doesn't only beat Michigan this weekend, but they run the table and win the Big Ten. Ohio State gets a second loss against Michigan or something like that. And then, or maybe they lose to Purdue. Michigan State's a Big Ten champ. NC State then runs the table and maybe picks up a loss to Florida State, like I mentioned. So they're a one-loss ACC champ. And then they have some other undesirable from the Pac-12. I don't even know who's still in it. Washington State? Washington State gets in there. That's whenever you would see the committee be like, okay, who do we really want in this playoff? Do we want NC State, Washington State, or do we just give UCF a chance? They went undefeated last year. I could see that being the only scenario where they actually sit down and they try to debate who they should put in.
I don't know how, if they win out, I don't know how the playoff committee leaves them out 2 years in a row. For as pissed off as Alabama was, the ratings would be through Jupiter to have Alabama and UCF in the same pod first round of the playoffs.
I don't think it would last that long. I think that would be 30-0 at halftime.
Guess what? I'd watch it just to see what happens, because of that 1,000,000-to-1 shot that UCF upsets Alabama. That's history.
I agree with Matt.
No one thought App State would knock off Michigan in the big house. That's why you play the game.
Well, I'll say this. I think if they get snubbed, that's whenever you start to get the expansion talk. Because all they have to do is threaten a lawsuit. Like, hey, how are we not getting picked? Like, what do you want us to do? We're in this division. Call them the NCAA. They didn't do it in the BCS because they had a seat at the table. With the New Year's Six Bowls, they can say they have a seat at the table, but they know the playoff money is way different. Very different.
And I'll argue that you've brought this up before with the Premier League soccer, how there's teams that get the higher money venues, they get the higher money teams, they get the higher venue, everything. Does that then push for college football, where with your pod system that you now have your Power Fives or your top tier programs that show that they can consistently recruit, that they can bring in the talent, that they can compete? If you're not competing, if you're the bottom tier of, say, the Big Ten or the ACC, that you take those bottom 5 teams and you swap them out with, the UCFs, I'm trying to think of like the Houstons, the teams that are in these non-power fives that, they're still playing their games. They're still putting good records in, but they're not getting the same respect that you would from a power five.
And I'll end my.
Does it set the table for?
No, you have a good idea, and I know we've talked about it before, and I'll even end my thoughts on the show and let you guys do the final bell here. But I think that could work in football if they have affiliate conferences. So you have the Big Five or whatever. If they're going to stick with the 4-team playoff, I think eventually one of the conferences is going to go. For this scenario, we'll just pick the Big 12. Let's say some of their teams go join the Pac-12 or whatever. I think for that to work, the relegation, I think it could work, and I think that's how you could stave off some of these lawsuits. And I think it would really help a conference like the ACC right now, where their one division is weak. Let's say they keep the conferences. For basketball and every other sport, you're still the ACC. But for football, you have an affiliate with like the AAC, where you're right. If you have a couple poor seasons in a row, you just switch with the champion just for football. For that next season, you let UCF play in that division with Pitt. Would they be able to win that division this year? After going undefeated last year, they would jump right up into that. That's their affiliate. You have the MAC conferences like the Big 10 affiliate. Then you pick one of the other ones as like the SEC affiliate. And that top team, whoever wins that conference, gets to play in that conference next year. And that's how it starts. Basically how relegation works in the Premier League. And UCF would have a shot this year. And I honestly think that UCF this year, they could win that side of the ACC. We just talked about a 7-way tie. And that ACC championship game would be 100 times more exciting. UCF versus Clemson. Right now, what are we going to get? Pitt versus Clemson, Georgia Tech versus Clemson, Virginia. They're all still in it. We don't know. Just put your name in a hat, pick it out. So I like that, Matt, and I think that could be a way, because those big conferences are going to do everything they can to stop that money sharing. So do the relegation, and they only have to pay 1/14 or whatever, however many of their teams can get in, because you better believe then too, the Rutgers gets down to MAC level for football. Rutgers is going to do everything they can to get promoted back up and kick out whatever MAC team, Eastern, Western Michigan, whichever Michigan wins it or whatever. They're going to do whatever they can to get back to that level, and then you'll see better products. So that's it. Final bell. We'll go around. Rick, you got anything this week?
I got 3 things here. So I want to thank the Miami Marlins. They got rid of that stupid thing out left center that gives for the home runs with the Dolphins and the spinning thing. That's gone. So it's going to be gone this week. So 21 years ago on this date, Bam Bam Bigelow won the ECW title. It was one of the last title
you're breaking up a bit, but
he ever won because he passed away. So starting up on me. But wait 1 second here. Last thing. Did you guys see the USA Today football movie rankings of all time according to USA Today?
No, I didn't even know.
Did you guys see it?
I didn't even know USA Today still existed.
It's 25 years ago this week would have been Rudy got released. So Rudy's been remastered and everything. Rudy is ranked, according to USA Today, number 1. It must have been written by Notre Dame fans, because Rudy was number 1. Newt Rockne was number 2. Some draft day got number 3. Draft day with Kevin Costner. I know the drafting.
I thought that movie got rated really low.
Yeah. And some of these were actually awful. Blindside, which I could barely watch, got 5.
Wait, where was Remember the Titans?
Didn't even make the top 10. Jerry Maguire made 8, and that was a chick flick if I ever saw one. Longest Yard was 10. And Remember the Titans, the one that had Burt Reynolds. The Burt original. Reynolds version. Original. Where he was the lead.
Burt Reynolds, but
Burt Reynolds being the lead. Okay. Got 10. Remember the Titans 11. I'm like, unnecessary roughness, I thought, went at 12, and I'm like, these are just absolutely awful. The Replacements got 14. Keanu's one of the worst Keanu Reeves movies ever. Got 14? Come on. Terrible ones. I could think of better ones that deserve it more. But yeah, that was the rankings, and I thought it was awful. And I kept thinking, like, how does not, like, Longest Yard should have been the top one overall. I don't know what you guys. That was one that came to me.
What about Bend It Like
what was
Beckham?
the one with? That was a soccer movie.
Oh, you're talking about American football.
American football. American football.
Not football.
Movie. Not football. I mean, the Water Boy got 24th.
Where did all the right moves rank?
Yeah, my dad was in all the right moves. I think they should. That should be on the list.
17.
1983.
1983.
I'm actually surprised it was on the list, to be honest. I don't even think it's on Movies Anywhere, that thing where you can get movies and have like the digital vault that Disney does. I don't even think they offer that.
No, my sister has a copy of it. That's how I got to watch it the last time. So, but yeah, The Last Boy Scout, I thought was underrated. It should have been the top 10. It only got 16.
What about Little Giants?
So, did not make it. But the one where The Rock and like his daughter made 20 was 20, beating Friday Night Lights at 22. Varsity Blues 23.
I don't remember half these movies.
You don't remember Friday Night Lights was Billy Bob Thornton was the coach.
I thought that was a TV show.
High school. No, that was later with the guy that was in the TV show that was a CBS show where he got the paper early edition. Yeah, I know terrible TV shows.
All right. Well, send me this list. We'll put it out there.
Yeah, I don't agree with it. Wanted to see what your guys' favorite football movie was.
And I don't know. Matt?
I got to go with Rudy. Rudy's got to be number one.
Rudy, that's not even one. It's not even a true story. Half the scenes were all faked. They said that the people in the cheering in the stands, there wasn't even 100 people cheering his name. In the past, who was the quarterback? The quarterback that threw it. Was it Vince Vaughn? Vince Vaughn threw the interception. That's
really?
Also not a true story.
I didn't even know he was in that.
I believe Vince Vaughn was the quarterback, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I watched it.
When you said football movies, the only one really I could think of was Remember the Titans. So,
yeah, and I don't know how that got 11. That was a good movie. So, a lot of good young actors were in that movie too.
All right, Matt, what do you got for Final Bell this week?
Well, Florida State's coming off a bye, and I'm curious to see what they do with their quarterback situation because DeAndre Francois just has been struggling with the reads in Florida State's Gulf Coast offense. And I just want to see, coming out versus Wake Forest, does the change in quarterback have a change in the offensive production? Because going back to the stuff we talked about, I think Francois is holding the ball too long, and it just looks like he's just getting drilled repetitively. And I'm hoping that the Taggart pulls the trigger. Having the bye week, he's had enough opportunities to evaluate what Francois can do, and maybe giving Francois the nod this week, or Blackman the opportunity this week to get some reps, get some extra time, and come out. Maybe the second half of the season turns out better for the Noles.
All right. Well, that's it for this week's show. Thanks for listening. You follow us on Southbound Sports, Instagram and Facebook, S-Bound Sports on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes, tell your friends, and we will see you next week.